Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Ophir and I'm the CEO of Cympire, a company that develops a training platform for cyber professionals. And I want to talk to you today about the future of cybersecurity education. And actually, after I wrote the title of the lecture, I understood that I can also talk about education, the future of cybersecurity, since it really impacts how cybersecurity will look at every country that you represent here. I'll talk a little bit about learning, then cover a little bit of cybersecurity and the challenges that we have in this domain, and then tell you what I think about how the future looks like in this domain. So before I start, I'll cover two different organizations that really shaped how I look at learning, what is my perception about learning. The first is my high school. This is a famous established high school in Jerusalem. And the thing is, in this high school, is that most of our exams never covered the stuff or the material that the teachers covered during the class. Okay? We always had to learn for the exams total new material. And the reason is that our teachers saw their purpose in us obtaining a tool set of self-learning. Learn by ourselves and have the capability or the sense of capability that we can deal with each and every material that we will encounter in the future by ourselves. And that's what they really achieved. It was a very successful concept. And the second one is the Israeli Air Force, where I come from. After 27 years of service in the Air Force, the Israeli Air Force has reached remarkable achievements due to the culture of learning and the culture of debriefing, the debriefing cycle, that from the moment that you reach to the squadron until the last day that you're flying, and every other duty that you carry on in the Air Force, you keep on learning and try to improve your performance. And the way that we do this in the Air Force is by dividing the learning cycle into 4 different steps. The first one is we either fight or practice, but we always act. And while you act, you encounter a lot of events. The second phase is to select which events were really the meaningful ones, because you can't cover all the events. You have to concentrate maybe in three meaningful events that you ask yourself and you understand what happened during your practice or during the operational experience that you have. The next phase is ask yourself why the things that happened, and what we call in the root cause of analysis, you try to really get to the root of why the things that happened, what really affected the way you performed when you performed. And the last step is to determine what you want to do with this, or how are you going to act in the next event or the next practice and training. And this is where you choose if you act the same or you change your performance. And this cycle goes forever, every day, every flight, and it really gets into your culture and your way of thinking. And so this is why when I talk about learning, I see learning as the change of behavior. The behavioral change that happens after you understand the things that you need to understand from your experience, this is the real learning. And if I tried with my limited graphical capabilities to put this on a graph, if we have 3 different events that occur over time, and we really don't want to keep our performance level, we want our performance level to get higher in each and every event, then there are 2 things that we need to monitor here. The first thing is when the reflection happened, and the distance between the event and the reflection is very important for how much will you produce from this practice, from this training. And as shorter the time, then when you reflect between the event and the reflection, then you produce more value from this training. The second one is the time distance between the reflection and the event. And what we are doing with this in the Air Force is that sometimes we reflect during flight. We're doing something, we stop, we reflect during flight, and after a few minutes we do this again and see how do we get better in order to really make our performance curve optimal. So after talking a little bit about reflection and events, what I can summarize here is that the feedback, the immediate feedback that you get from an experience really determines how will you perform in the next time. And I can also see this practice in computer games. Okay, everybody knows this game? I see kids training on or playing this game, actually learning things about their environment, about how to be creative, and the mechanism of immediate feedback that is implemented in the games really affects the capability of kids to self-learn and to train themselves to perform better in each and every trial in the game. I promised to cover a little bit about cybersecurity too. So if we want to talk about cyber domain challenges, the first one is, as I see it, is values on the left side. I don't know if you're familiar with the computer game Grand Theft Auto. This game, you gain points if you shoot people, if you run them over, horrible things to do. Now, the thing is that most kids don't play this game and then go ahead and do this in reality because they know the difference between good and bad. But if we teach our kids and train them how to be better cybersecurity professionals and how you can hack into certain assets in the network, this is easy. And a lot of kids tend to get confused. And if you don't train them ethics in parallel to train them in the real technical performance of what they need to do, we'll have a problem. The second one is attacker perception. The attacker perception is really different than the common perception that technical people have. If you are teaching people or teaching students how to be a better computer programmers, you teach them how to create, how to build things, what are the rules that you build things in order for them to work and to work efficiently. The attacker perception is exactly the opposite. The attacker perception is how to break things, how to bypass the rules, how to go around certain mechanisms. And this is why it's difficult for computer science guys or people that we trained in the Army and in the Air Force to be cyber defenders, to understand what is the attacker against them thinking and what is his next step, what is he doing in our system. The rate of change is quick. I don't know another domain that is changing in the rate as the cyber domain, even though Igal Luna said the cyber is not a domain. I'll call it this for this presentation. And the last thing is teamwork and synergy. We know that cyber security issues are issues across the businesses, across the organization, and there's an issue of how the SOC or the cybersecurity professionals operate the whole or manipulate the whole organization to be better defended when we have a crisis or when we want to engineer a different or integrate a different cybersecurity solution. Now, when we build and create stuff and when we program new capabilities in our product, we have certain people, we call them DevOps engineers. I don't know if you heard this name. So DevOps engineers are they're in charge of how to make synergy in the development organization and to connect the development with the operations. We don't have this kind of job or title in the cybersecurity domain, but the synergy here is problematic, and the small portion of security personnel needs to be in charge of the whole organization. The second, or the other four challenges that I want to cover is the cybersecurity education challenges. The first is the capacity building challenge. I'm sure that every country deals with the same challenge. Some countries have a bigger gap in training people, but as I see it, a KPI or a key indicator of the training program that you use in your country, you need to make sure that the scale is big enough and you can produce enough cybersecurity professionals in the rate that you need to do so. The second is how to teach people to problem solve or to be creative, to think creative, and we need to make sure that our training programs are not only dealing with theoretics, but also make them think and develop the creativity center how to solve real-life problems during their training. The third one, operational perspective. I think some of the lecturers here touched it a little bit, but the cybersecurity domain is an operational domain. A lot of people tend to relate it to a technical domain, and most of the investments and efforts are done in the technical aspect of cybersecurity, which means we're looking for a silver bullet to solve all our problems. In fact, as we see it, both in Cympire and in other places in the army, is that this is a totally operational domain. You need to have intelligence. You need to think strategic. You need to have strategic kind of thinking. You need to have deception mechanisms, sensors, etc. And you need to think in an operational manner. The last thing is theory and practice gap, which means from my experience, a lot of students that I meet and a lot of trainees that I meet during the years, they understand fully the theory that they were taught in the class, but when we place them in front of a computer and a real-life problem, it's really hard to transform from theoretics to a real-life problem. And they only get the insights or the proper insights after they connect the dots between the theory and the practice, how to really defend or how to really penetrate a system. So after talking about cybersecurity and learning, let's talk a little bit about how do we do it? How do we enter the future of cybersecurity education? So the first thing is my recommendation: start early. We have programs here in Israel that start during the early years in school, and what you gain from that is you gain awareness and skill from really early stages, or from when people are still gaining the tendencies and the awareness that they need to have in order to really encounter what they encounter in the cybersecurity domain. Our brain is not really prepared for the cyber domain. We know how to defend ourselves from physical dangers. We know how to understand why the road is, or to explain our kids why the roads are dangerous and why they can hit by a car. But it's really hard to explain to a kid why is the cyber domain dangerous and what are the dangers in the cyber domain. So start early and give awareness to the kids in early stages. The second thing is, I talked a little bit about this, you have to deal with ethics and values. You have to give the kids that we train, or the people that we train in the cyber domain, and deal with how do we distinguish between right and wrong? How do we tell what we can do and where we can do? If you're working in a government establishment and you're doing certain kind of actions, that the minute that you step out of this government facility, you cannot do whatever you've done while you were at work, because here it's right and there it's wrong. My recommendation is gamify stuff. I don't know if you're aware of the amount of money that gaming industries are putting into understanding what is the state of the player and how to give him the most personalized experience that he can gain in the game. The reason is that the catastrophic event of the gaming industry is when the player feels frustrated and that he's tired of the game and he gets out of the game and goes somewhere else. Now, if you take this to the education or to the learning experience that you want to give to your students or your trainees, it's the same. You want to give them an experience of progress, that the challenges are challenging, but they can deal with it. You want to make sure that they are suited for their level, and you want to make sure that they have fun, because they will want to stay and keep on training and learn more. Moreover, if you see on the top of the screen, competition is a real driver for people to gain more skill and drive themselves to higher performance, just from being in a game and competing against each other. As I talked before, the cybersecurity domain is an operational domain, and we saw the need of developing strategic and tactical thinking in trainees. If you design a cybersecurity mechanism for organization, you need to think strategically. You need to understand what is the attack surface, how do I prevent the attackers from coming in. If they come in, where do I put the deception mechanisms, where do I put the sensors, etc. So develop strategic and tactical thinking. Okay, so I'll go quick on the last couple of slides. You have to train and assess. This is the recommendation. Go from attacker single player to defender single player, and then train as a team. And the last phase, go train red versus blue or attacker versus defenders, because no matter how developed is your attack system, always when we train human against human, we have the best training. Now you can see the SMS from on the left-hand side. I don't know if you recognize where it's from, but my recommendation is have a safe and virtual playground, so you won't get undesired effects when you train. And also, you can in those environments you can make mistakes and learn better after you get the things wrong. We talked a little bit about customized and self-paced challenges. If you want to have an optimal cybersecurity education experience, you have to let the students run quick where they're strong and walk where they have to have more escort, more training, more mentoring, like everybody else. We talked, I'll skip this one, and talked about the debriefing. Ask yourself what happened, why happened, and how do you perform better, and then change. And this is my last recommendation, because practice makes perfect. So thank you very much. I'm sorry for the rushing over.